Good morning, ladies. We're going to try doing this from a different angle because for Christmas I got a posh, well, it's not posh, it's a second-hand tripod, but I hope that it will allow me to do videos from above, which hopefully should reduce the boobage thing, so you don't actually see quite so much of my chest in your videos. I know a lot of you have become quite attached to it, but and in fairness, so am I. But you know, you don't need it in the videos. This will hopefully give you a clearer picture of what we're doing. So we're going to start with our piping, and you will cut a square of fabric, the size for which is on the pattern. So check your pattern and cut your square of fabric the exact size it says. Then you're going to use your rotary cutter and ruler to cut that square of fabric in half from the top corner to the bottom, so top left corner to the bottom right corner. I've already actually done that because I didn't realise the video wasn't on, so now I have two triangles. And bear in mind, this is what I use. This is using fabric, not using faux leather. If I'm using faux leather, I don't do this quite the same way because I don't need to cut faux leather on the bias. So I will show you how to do faux leather, but at the moment we're just doing fabric. So what I've got is my square that I've now cut in half along the diagonal from the top left to the bottom right corner. Doesn't matter if you want to do bottom left to top right, not a problem, as long as you end up with two triangles. Now, the only problem I can see with this fabric is that this fabric looks exactly the same on the wrong side as it does on the right side. So you do have to think about this and how we do this. So these are both right sides up. I'm going to take this piece of fabric and I'm going to turn it over and lay it right sides together on top of the other piece. So what I end up with is the straight edge matching up, and you end up with this sort of V shape in the middle. And you're going to stitch down this long straight edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, if you prefer to do 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, that's fine, as long as you stick to one or the other. You will have enough piping. I've calculated that you actually have a little bit extra piping anyway, because there's always an element of sort of different people will cut a little bit extra off, so I've given you more piping than you actually need. And if you prefer to use, I sometimes do a much bigger square and make a lot of pipe and then keep it stored in one of my drawers if I think it's a colour that I'll use again. So something like red I use a lot of, black I use a lot of, so I'll do extra piping, because if I'm doing piping I might as well continue to do piping. So I have my two triangles and they are right sides together. And I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance down this long straight side. Now I'm going to, in true Blue Peter fashion, I'm going to show you one that I've already done. So there we are. I have my two triangles, and they were pressed, but I've just screwed them up and put them on there. And I've stitched along that straight edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm now going to take my ironing pad and I'm going to lay that odd shape, which is now sort of a squashed diamond shape, and this is the wrong side that's facing upwards. I'm going to open up the seam and press that seam open. I usually finger press it a little bit just to kind of get it going. So press that seam open with the tip of your, this isn't great fabric. And you notice that this isn't interfaced either. I don't use any interfacing on piping because I want it to be, I don't want it to be stable. I want it to be bendy and movable so that we don't get any nasty creases around the curves of our bag. I'm making a pig's ear of this, trying not to get myself in the camera shot. So let's just open right down to the bottom. then turn it over and make sure that it's nice and even on the other side. So just press it out. You don't want to see that seam really. It's part of the makeup of your piping, but the seam should be hidden. And if you keep pressing it nice and flat, then it will just disappear. More so if you've got plain fabric than it does if you've got a patterned fabric, because you can't really match the design. So now what I've got is this squashed diamond shape. I'm going to get rid of my ironing pad. And what you're going to need is your ruler. Now the first thing I do is take off about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge, just to ensure that it's nice and straight. You can you see that? Let me just see if I can take that out a little bit. Yay, look at that. Now you've got a bit more of the boobage, sorry. So I'm going to use my rotary cutter and I'm going to take a 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge, and I'm going to just get rid of that. Now I'm going from one cutting mat to another, so there's always a little bit there that it doesn't seem to like to cut. And then I'm going to cut strips from this that are 1 1.25 inches deep. And I'm just going to keep cutting. Oh, going to have to stop.